Mr. President, do you think that the charges against Trump are politically motivated?
No comment.
Well, of course he's not going to comment on that. Why would he? That would be the dumbest thing that he could do if he did. Welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch here with you. You can listen coast to coast all around the country from sea to shining sea. You can also listen by streaming it, or you can watch the simulcast of the nationally syndicated radio program all over YouTube and Facebook or channel 347 Direct TV. And a quick note, I have no idea. I was reading a headline. I think it involved Senator Mike Lee. And so I had Senator in my head. And I called Congressman Dan Crenshaw, who's going to be joining us in a second, Senator Crenshaw. And as I said it, as it came out of my mouth, it was one of those things where I couldn't catch the words and bring them back in. When you're on 3 hours a day, every day, things happen, guys. It happens. This is the nature of the game. So he's joining us from Skype, from the Republic, the beautiful Republic of Texas. Congressman Dan Crenshaw, Texas's 2nd Congressional District. Good to see you, sir. I just wanted to get your kind of initial response. This has been the weirdest news week that I have seen in quite some time, particularly yesterday evening. But I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this whole indictment thing. I mean, do you think, separate from anybody's perspective on the former president, do you think that what Alvin Bragg is doing is giving any kind of reason to anybody to trust in the system of law and order in this country?
No, it's bad on a lot of fronts. Where do we even begin on this? His attempt to effectively prosecute a federal law is certainly questionable. Now they're providing some strange legal argument and to be able to do that. We don't know exactly what the charges are yet.
Right.
His connection to George Soros is obvious. Is backed by him to get elected. He campaigned on this idea. So you've got another problem here, which I think is antithetical to American sense of justice, which is that they were looking for a crime. They chose a person and then they started looking for a crime. That's not how our justice system works. You had people like Nancy Pelosi tweet out today. I just responded to her today. She said, Mr. Trump will have the ability to go to court and prove his innocence. And I'm like, that's not how this works. You have to prove someone's guilt. You were innocent until proven guilty. That's a really key part of our basic sense of justice, and they violate all of this. So you want to talk about threats to democracy? This is a threat to our democracy, our sense of democracy, our sense of justice. When we say democracy, I think we should mean our sense of justice, our sense of our republic, the trust that we have in our institutions. So talk about true threats. Like this kind of thing is exactly that. And I think that's why it's troubling to everyone, no matter what their opinion is of Trump or his relationship with Stormy Daniels and all of that. Like there's nothing good about any of that. But this is wrong. And what they continue to do to the former president, whether it's the Mar-a-Lago raid or this, it's just wrong. It's overreach and they know it.
And it makes people wonder, well, gosh, this is someone who's it gets press attention so easily. If they can't, if they can do this to someone of that, recognition in the United States, what chance does, the little guy have of surviving? And I just go back to the Tea Party days when the IRS was going after all these little bitty Tea Party groups. Some of them, and I don't say this as a pejorative, run by little old blue hairs, and they were being prevented by the IRS from actually organizing the way that they needed to be effective. What chance do regular people have? I know it's a heavy question. It's Friday.
Honestly, it seems like they have a better chance than someone like Trump. They're truly after him.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think this is going to turn? And this is my actual real. This is also a concern that I have because I understand that for many people on the right, the closest they can get to accountability is a reckoning, and my concern is that this is going to go into a tit for tat thing, where we are going to go back and forth with lawfare and dragging people to this and that, even and maybe not, maybe you don't even have to go to the level that Alvin Bragg is going here to try to, statecraft federal law and rewrite federal election law. But is that a concern that you have? Because I see a lot of good people out there who just, they feel like there's no other way to have accountability. And I really don't blame them. I share their frustration completely. But how do we avoid, because then I think that we just enable Democrats to allow the, reformation of this as some sort of banana republic.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. It encourages people to violate their own deeply held principles, our Republican principles. Remember, we're conservatives, which means we're trying to conserve the American foundation and these principles that underlie it. So you can't lose sight of that. I have a deep fear that many conservatives or right wingers, let's call them, do lose sight of that. That I'm very scared of that. To avoid that, I like to show people that this doesn't work for the left as well as you think. Okay. It's worth noting, and I also think that the following take, the political take that I'm about to give you, is I think something that our audience needs to hear. I think there's a different motive here than most people think. The motive here is not to actually put Trump in jail. There's no way that these charges end up with Trump in jail. I do think this case gets thrown out. It's complete BS. Everybody knows it. That's not their point. These people are smarter than you give them credit for. Notice what Trump's polling has done in the last couple of days on the presidential primary side. It's gone way up. Just like in Mar-a-Lago, because when they unfairly charge him, attack him, do these kind of things to Trump, everybody rallies against him. It doesn't matter what you think of Trump if you're on the right, people have different opinions of him. Everybody agrees this is wrong. And what does that do? It boosts him. That's exactly what Soros wants. They think he's their best candidate. They like to meddle in Republican primaries. We don't meddle in their primaries. I would love to raise money and meddle in their primaries. It's hard to do that. Our donors don't want to do it. They do it all the time. This is their MO, right? They want to choose the candidate they want to run against. And so I just want, and you can take whatever conclusions you want from that. It has no bearing on how you feel about Trump one way or the other. I just want people to understand that Democrats are meddling in our own primaries. They're meddling with how we think about each other on the right. I think that's a primary motive of theirs. They know this is not going anywhere. They know Trump is never going to jail.
I think that's why so many of them still support TikTok and still want TikTok in the United States, even though it's literally a CCP founded and funded and operated entity that's masquerading as a private business, but not. That kind of explains it. I want to move to the border because you have actually been working on legislation targeting the cartels. Looking at, this situation, we had the headline earlier of, I think it was 40 illegal entrants coming from Central and South America, going into Mexico on their way to the United States that were being detained in one of these, detention centers somewhere in Mexico. It caught fire during a protest by some of the inmates. 40 people burned to death. Mexico is saying that it's the fault of the United States, which they're not wrong, because these are Biden's policies that are, it's like a beacon drawing everyone here. And then the cartels are making so much money off of it. I was talking to one of your colleagues, also from Texas, Chip Roy. He was saying that really China's involvement in the cartel business has been reduced to the point of they're kind of bit players with opioids and everything else, because the cartels wanted to make more money. So they kind of worked China out of it. Now they control all the components. They're the ones who put it all together. I mean, it's a very sophisticated operation is what he and others have been saying, to where that's really, I think, underappreciated by press and by a lot of Americans. I wanted to kind of get your assessment on that before we get into how to deal with it.
On the China involvement,
well, there was
not sure.
In the early days of fentanyl trafficking, etc. Cartels were being accused of getting a lot of the inputs from China, and now it's really they're controlling all of it. Not really so much with China; it's just the cartels have made so much cash with the flow of human smuggling and opioids that they're really a lot more sophisticated than really even the press is giving them credit for.
Two things can be true at once. They are highly sophisticated. They've made a lot of money, but still 90% of the precursors and the input chemicals
still come from China.
Yeah, that has not changed. I have up-to-date information on this. And,
interesting.
That has not changed. So the Chinese are still largely to blame, and we should be moving upstream to target that. Now it's very difficult to target that supply chain. This is so when you look at like the easiest targets to deal with this problem. And this is something Chip and I would certainly agree on. You've got to go to the people physically making it and physically pressing the pills. That's just easier, because now we're going into a comfort zone when it comes to our intelligence and military capabilities. Because now we're just targeting networks, right? Just like we've been doing for the last 20 years with counterterrorism. This is something we can do. We need the Mexicans to get on board. This is why I've been pressing so hard for an AUMF that would just simply authorize the president military force. That doesn't mean dropping bombs in Mexico. What it means is we can do intelligence collection. We can work by, with, and through the Mexican military. Most importantly than anything, to be honest, it sends a very clear message to the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels that you guys have reached a red line, and it's in your best interest if you just stop producing fentanyl right now. That's what I really want. And that's my pitch to Democrats. I'm like, get on this bill. Even if Biden won't act on it, it actually doesn't matter. This is a message to the cartels that says we are so serious that we are ready to act. It is in your best interest if you stop what you're doing right now. You have finally pissed us off enough.
It is kind of interesting that the story of the 4 kidnapped Americans that ended up, the cartels ended up rounding up the guys of the subgroup that did it and put their shirts over their head and gagged them and tied their hands behind their back and left them in the middle of the streets for authorities.
Scared.
Is that because of the increase? Because I've never, and then they sent a letter saying that this is not our code of conduct. I've never seen anything like that. I thought I was watching a weird sitcom.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's a very telling moment. And it tells you that the cartels are very, very afraid of America. They're very scared of America. They knew they made that mistake. I think they mistake those Americans for Haitian drug runners. They're terrified of us. So let's leverage that. Let's leverage the terror that they have of us. They do not want to wake up the sleeping giant that is the American military and our capabilities. And so all we have to do is talk a little tough. Make it clear that we're willing to use authorities and talk tough back to AMLO too. So, I mean, the Mexican president is a terrible partner on this. He's obviously, he's threatened to campaign against me personally just for going after the cartels. I've never even said a word about him. And the guy did 3 press conferences on me defending the cartels and going after me, saying there's no fentanyl in Mexico. We don't even take fentanyl. That's a lie, by the way. They have a serious problem with fentanyl deaths in Mexico. Their own people are getting killed by it. Their own people are getting killed by the cartels. Obviously, it's produced in Mexico. So we need this guy to just wake up and understand that his own people want security for their country. We want security for their country. We need Mexico to be a prosperous, healthy, secure place. That would be better for America, better for them.
Right.
Yeah,
I wanted to play some audio for you really quickly. I had on earlier this week Vivek Ramaswamy, who was talking about some of the stuff at the border. And what he said kind of made my eyebrows go up a little bit because to your point of taking action against the cartels, how far does that go? And he had said, I don't know if we had it, he was talking about using targeted drone strikes. I'll play this real quick. It's just a couple of seconds.
I, as Commander-in-Chief of the United States, intend to use our military to protect our own border. That is controversial.
Would you treat the cartels as terrorists?
Absolutely. But treating them as terrorists is not just what other people mean, which is freezing their financial assets. That's what they're talking about. That's table stakes. If I want to treat them as terrorists, I'm going to treat them like bin Laden, al-Zawahiri, treat them like Soleimani. I'm talking about targeted drone strikes, airstrikes, actually kill the head of the snake when it comes to the fentanyl crisis in the U.S. That is a legitimate use of force. And if we can do it to ISIS...
let me ask you, like, how far does that go? Because some people go, wait a minute, we're bringing jets and all kinds of stuff. I mean, what is that? Because I just think, honestly... I mean, I don't know. Maybe I've watched like too much Jack Ryan. I don't know. I'm like, you could send like 5 dudes down there and like take care of this. That's just me. What's your thought?
Yeah, I like Vivek. I've had him on my podcast to talk about subjects that he's well versed in, which is like ESG and finance and investing. This stuff's I think he's he's running for president now. I think he's trying to sensationalize a few things. I'm a little bit more nuanced and careful in how I talk about this because I'm very serious about this. So, look, he's not wrong that's a threat that I would like them to believe could happen. Right? That's one of the points of passing a law like an authorized use of military force. Yeah, and it's deterrence, right? It's like they now think that because we've legalized that authority. They now think that could happen. Now, is that what you should do on your first day of as president? Is literally a drone strike on a sovereign ally?
Maybe not.
One of our biggest trading partners. That might be a really bad idea. What you need to do, again, how I would describe our use of an AUMF would be non-kinetic force. Again, the military can't even do intelligence collection with our current authorities. And we can't do operations alongside the Mexican military. We don't have that authority. So you need to have a willing partner, right? And AMLO's not right now, but he could be if we move along right and we get bipartisan support here and we say, look, this is better for everybody. Let's do it the right way, and let's scare these guys into just stopping what they're doing. So look, he is right. He's right in spirit. In execution,
but it might not be the best thing on the first day. We got to get going, but I also, we're running out of time, but I just wanted to really quickly say you were also behind the legislation making Narcan over the counter, because the overdose are so, even accident, like people don't even know they're doing it at this point. I mean, I've heard horror stories. So you just really quickly, you made that possible being over the counter.
Yeah, well, the FDA, I'm not going to take credit for it,
Right.
but we absolutely pushed the FDA to do that. They did it, and look, credit where credit is due. Thank you to the FDA for doing that. And
They move fast.
parents
That's
everywhere.
unusual. That's a very unusual.
Don't get me started on all the other problems with the FDA. and
We
what
have
they
to get
could be
going,
doing
though.
for Americans.
Right. Congressman
But
Dan
yeah,
Crenshaw.
parents should know that they can buy Narcan, and I think you should have it at home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's scary. These are the times in which we live. This is what happens with an open border. Congressman Dan Crenshaw from the Republic of Texas. Thank you so much. Good to talk with you.